from Luke chapter 22, verse 39 to 44. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
As we have seen throughout the course of our service today, Jesus is well known for being very prayerful. At times we see him praying with others, praying with his disciples, praying with his followers. And then there are times where we see Jesus going off on his own to pray. His entire life and his entire ministry is shrouded in prayer. So it shouldn't come as a surprise to us to see that in his moments leading up to his arrest, to his crucifixion, as well as to his resurrection, we find him praying. And for me, it is here in the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus prays this prayer, that we get a glimpse of exactly what Jesus was going through. A glimpse of the agony that he was facing. And it truly speaks to what Jesus was feeling moments before his death. And he prays those words, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me." Those words demonstrate to us just how human Jesus was. They demonstrate to us that natural human side of who he is, the side that experienced pain, the side that experienced suffering, the side that experienced anguish, the side that experienced anxiety and stress, apprehension and even fear. You see, it is clear from the Old Testament traditions that this concept of the taking of the cup denotes that one would in essence be taking upon oneself the wrath of God. And here in the Garden of Gethsemane, as Jesus prays, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me," it denotes that Jesus himself would take this cup of wrath. he does so willingly. He does so that we, as his people, as children of God, would not have to bear that cup ourselves. And that alone, in and of itself, must have been a massive burden for Christ alone to carry. So much so that he praised those words, "If you are willing, take this cup from me." I believe it's a prayer that we are all familiar with. For how often do we ourselves come to the Lord in our times of suffering, in our times of anguish, in our times of fear and anxiety, and in some way, shape, or form, using very different words at times, come to the Lord and say, "Take this cup from me." I believe that sometimes we forget the fact that Jesus did not only suffer on the cross. We know and we understand that death by crucifixion, death on a cross, is extremely painful. It is extremely traumatic on the human body. It causes an immeasurable amount of pain, an incredible amount of suffering. But Jesus did not only suffer on the cross. I believe that, yes, on the cross, Jesus suffered physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, but the emotional suffering, the spiritual suffering, the mental suffering that Jesus felt is present in the Garden of Gethsemane as he prays those words. This sweating of the blood, it's a condition that is called hematidrosis. It occurs in individuals who are facing or rather suffering an immense amount of stress. Around the sweat glands is this net-like structure of blood vessels. And when faced with the pressures of stress, those blood vessels begin to constrict. And eventually, when stress begins to subside, those vessels burst. And blood is forced out of the body, out of the pores of the human skin as they mix with sweat. And it is indeed a very rare medical condition, but it happens. And some would like us to believe that when Luke uses this term, blood, or it was like blood falling to the ground, they would have us believe that this is some kind of metaphorical language that is used, as if we should understand that it is just a metaphor. But it is not, because there are ancient as well as modern documents that show us that this condition takes place. And it goes to show us just how much stress and pressure was upon Jesus while in the garden. And yet even facing this turmoil, even facing this pressure, even facing the anxiety of what was to come, facing the weight of sin upon his own shoulders, and the looming death on the cross, Jesus still has complete faith in God. He has complete trust in God. He has complete hope in what God is doing. And it is clear to us as Jesus completes this prayer when he says, "Yet not my will, but yours be done." See, Jesus wanted to, he could have walked away. If Jesus wanted to, he could have said, "This is not for me," and left us to our own devices to face the punishment that we so rightly deserve. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he says, "Your will be done." Demonstrating this trust that he has in God. Demonstrating his conscious and voluntary obedience to God. That so much so that he endures the cross. He endures the pain. He endures the suffering. He endures the abandonment and the unprecedented pressure associated with crucifixion. And all of that in the name of love. And so, friends, on this Good Friday, as we have heard the reflections of Christ's prayers, and as we reflect upon this prayer, may it be a lesson to us that in all circumstances, whether good or bad, we ought to come to the Lord in prayer. We ought to trust in his word fully and completely. We ought to trust in his sovereignty, trust in his grace, and trust in his love for you and for me. But you heard the voice of my supplication when I cried to you for help. Be strong and let your heart take courage, all you that hope in the Lord.
Into your hands